in. Okay, the call has been recorded. Let me see. Okay, it started. Thank you very much, Dr. Robert Sungenis, Ph.D. Robert Sungenis. I have come to know him thanks to the last documentary movie that he has produced, but I have discovered then that he's a very prolific author, Catholic, I understand. And before going
Italian
to the...
also.
Sorry?
Italian also.
Italian as a heritage, I think. Or you feel Italian?
Full Italian, 100%.
Oh, really? Wonderful. So we can switch to Italian now. I don't have the burden to speak English. No. Okay. Just before starting, can you briefly introduce yourself and tell us about your background, how you started your CV or something, and how you went into the study of this aspect of cosmology?
Yes, I'm a graduate of George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and I graduated with a religion degree, but previous to that, I was a physics major. So, and I studied astronomy as well. And so I've been around science all my life. My father is a doctor, a medical doctor here in the States, and I was going to be a doctor myself, but then I had a very intense religious experience when I was in college, and I didn't want to be a doctor any longer, but I still knew the sciences. I had studied the sciences since I was a child. And then I went on to Westminster Theological Seminary, got my master's degree, and then I got my Ph.D. at Calamus International University, and that's where I wrote my dissertation on geocentrism, 700 pages of an intensive work for about 3 years.
How old were you at that time?
I was, that was 2006, so I was in my 50s.
Okay. Okay, in your 50s. Sorry, you mentioned that you've been in the seminary, meaning that you had to become priest or just for the studies?
No, actually, I was a Protestant at the time. I wasn't a Catholic at that time. Yeah,
Protestant. Okay.
Yes. I had plans to be a Protestant seminary professor or a college professor. And then I converted back to the Catholic Church in 1992.
Really?
And yes. And then it was around 2003 that I began to get involved with geocentrism. And then I wrote the books, Galileo Was Wrong, the Church Was Right, which you don't have. But it turned out to be a 3-volume work of 2,200 pages because I was so enthralled with the subject. And that's where it all started.
This is something that I didn't expect, but it kind of interests me a lot. Can you, if it's possible, if it's not too personal, can you mention your conversion to Catholicism? If it's
yes, I was a card-carrying Protestant. I was an elder in my church. I was teaching on the radio. I written some books about Protestant theology, and then I had a conversion experience where I had read a book written by Cardinal Gibbons, who was the Archbishop of Baltimore, and it was an apologetic book, and he was explaining all the reasons why someone would want to become a Catholic in the apologetic sense. In other words, he was answering, why the Catholics don't believe the Bible only, why they believe in the Eucharist, why they believe in the sacraments, why they believe in the Pope, all those apologetic questions. And for the first time in my life, I had really found some very good answers to those questions, and I was moved, very moved. And so I wanted to come back to the Catholic Church at that time, which I did.
That's very interesting because in Italy those who have faith are all Catholic, more or less. And so hearing from someone who has made the path backwards is something that is interesting because normally when you're born into a culture, you're probably you have some difficulties in seeing the beauties of that, and you don't appreciate as much as others can, probably as you have done. Anyway, the reason why I wanted to see, well, the other side of the ocean, but virtually, Dr. Robert Sungenis, is because of these two movies that I have been captured by. The first one, which is actually the last one that he has produced, is The Principle, dealing with the Copernican principle. But after that, I've got to know him and downloaded lots of your conferences in Dallas and the one with Rick Delano, etc. And then I bought also this other one, Journey to the Center of the Universe. And I've been really fascinated by these two documentaries because they deal with the fact that the Earth is at the center of the universe and the Galilean vision was not right. It seems that no scientific experiments has been able to prove that the Earth is moving. But the interesting thing for me, is that they are really scientific. One would expect a theological kind of discussion, a philosophical approach, and on the contrary, they're really scientific. To be honest, I appreciated much more this one, to be honest. In my opinion, this is, well, I think 4 hours, 2 DVDs of full explanations. In this second one, which probably has had more success, you have done a work in, how can I say, trying to involve also people from the scientific community, which in some cases have denied to have been involved in that. I know that there has been some, how can I say, some denial. Can you explain the spirit of these 2 DVDs and the different times that you've done and the different reasons for buying one or the other?
Well, The Principle was the first one. That came out in U.S. theaters in October 2014. It played in Chicago, Los Angeles, San Diego, and about 7 or 8 other cities. And that one was made for the theater. And so that's the reason why we have some big name scientists in that movie, like Michio Kaku, George Ellis, Max Tegmark, Lawrence Krauss, and a few others. And we also have Kate Mulgrew, who was the captain of Star Trek Voyager back in 1995, as our narrator. And so that made it theatrically viable. And it enticed people to see it because we had some big famous names in there. We also have some not so famous people from the other side of the fence, scientifically, in the movie. And so it made for good polemics in the movie because they would present their side and we would present our side. And their side came from the experts in the field, the top scientists in the world. And as a matter of fact, 2 of them basically admitted that we were right in so many words. They admitted that we were right, that the Earth is in the center of the universe, and the scientific evidence leans toward that. And if someone is open to that scientific evidence, he's going to see it quite readily. But then, since it was for the theaters, it can only be an hour and a half long, and you really can't cover all the science in an hour and a half. If you really want to explain it to someone, they've got to be able to sit there for 4.5 hours, and we go through step by step the science so that they can see the nuts and bolts of it, how A leads to B and B leads to C and C leads to D and so on and so on. And so that takes 4.5 hours. And so you have a lot of time to give them a lot of detail in a comprehensive way, and it really works out. So it's like a 1-2 punch. For this topic.
Yeah, to be honest, it's not just one time, because the first time you see, you watch, you understand 50%, then you have to rewatch it and understand another 30%, and probably the third time you understand all of them. But it's very, very much scientifically proven and really grounded well. And by the way, I have to say there is a spectacular graphics. There is a part near to the end which I don't know if it was an idea of yours, or I don't know, where it seems like traveling in the space toward the center of the space with spectacular music, and at the end of this voyage you find the Earth, and it's very touching in my opinion. It was done very well. At the end of all this explanation, at the end of all these historic excursus that you have done, starting from the old Greeks and then coming to Michael Morley, etc. One question I have, we know that in the United States there are some communities or Christians who are very much strong believers, and they want, for example, that in public schools evolutionism, Darwinism is only taught in school as an hypothesis, and want it to be presented as an alternative with the creationism, or they call it like intelligent design, like Stephen Meyer, one of them, the most representative, etc. And here in Italy, we are, even if we are Catholics by origin or by tradition, etc., I don't see this kind of strength and the attempt to influence also the society, education, schools, etc. Kind of separation between our spiritual life and what the normal civil life, school, etc. goes on. And the idea that we have about this kind of communities or Christians that are in the United States, as we hear about them in the newspaper, etc., is like some kind of almost crazy people or community who live in the past, like the Amish, etc. But when you study them, you get to know someone like Stephen Meyer, for example, or yourself as well. You see that there is very, very much science behind that to prove this. And I wanted to ask you, does this effort influence or affect in some way the national programs, like in education, etc.? Are you having some effect, or are you kind of put in some kind of marginated in some reserve, like Indians? I don't know how to ask this. Do you have any effect on real society? Do you have any possibility to make yourself heard?
Well, you know, as Arthur Schopenhauer once said, all new ideas have three phases that they go through. One is that they're severely ridiculed. The second phase is that they're vehemently opposed. And the third phase is that they're accepted as if we always believed them. And right now we're in one of the first two phases. We haven't reached the third phase yet.
Yeah.
And you know, this is something that is going to take a lot of time. So although I can safely say that we have affected a lot of people, and you can tell that by the responses we get on our websites, our emails, and the vigorous opposition that we've had from major scientists in the world, that we do affect them. Whether they're ready to accept it or not, that's another question altogether. But we've had some effect, and we had enough effect that we know we have to keep on going.
Yeah, opposition means that you are the second stage. The first stage is when you are ridiculed or ignored. So if there is opposition, it means that you are ahead. There are some other Christian scientists, or priests also, like Robert Spitzer, or Russell Humphreys, or Saint Stephen Myers, who have no problem in accepting the idea of the Big Bang, for example, or the idea of an expanding universe. Your position seems to be a little bit beyond them. I mean, how do you relate to each other, if you know them, if there is a debate taking place or something?
Well, now that you bring up Father Spitzer, we've asked Father, because he put out a video of his own about cosmology about 2 or 3 years ago. Hasn't sold very well. And we've asked him to debate the issue, and he refused to debate the issue. I did debate Hugh Ross, who was another one of the scientists from Creation Research Institute, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I debated him about 2 years ago, I think, on the radio. There was a radio program, and that is available on our website. As a matter of fact, a transcribing of that debate is available. And then Humphreys, I've run into him, and as a matter of fact, I just wrote a critique of his article on the LIGO, LIGO, the laser interferometer, where they said they found black holes and all that stuff. So I have some interaction with them, but they're devoted to Einstein. They're devoted to Einstein's general relativity. Hugh Ross and Humphreys, for example, are devoted to Einstein. And basically, we're coming in where we're saying that, yeah, Einstein was good to a certain extent, but, you know, he faltered in this respect or that respect, and their ears aren't open to that yet, you see, because Einstein basically is the god of science today, and it's hard to get through that barrier, you see. So that's where they are. Spitzer, ever since Father Lemaitre made friends with Albert Einstein and invented the Big Bang back in 1936, Catholics have latched on to that. And so most Catholics today believe in the Big Bang, and that they've been spoon-fed that cosmology for decades now. So we're coming in another whole other area now. We're saying, no, that's not right. Not only does the Big Bang have problems internally, externally it has problems, because we have a whole new way of looking at the universe here that the universe itself is showing us by its own evidence. And I'm here talking about the cosmic microwave background radiation, for example, that we cover in depth in the principle.
Mm-hmm. Yes, by the way, for those who have not yet seen the documentaries of the conferences, Dr. Robert Sungenis is also, I could say, critic of the theory of relativity, Einstein's relativity. Can you explain the relationship between the geocentrism and the theory of relativity?
Well, yeah, it's very simple. And most people don't know this. They just don't know where special relativity began, and that was his first theory. That theory was invented in 1905 to answer an experiment that was done in 1887 by Albert Michelson. Albert Michelson's experiment found that the Earth wasn't moving in space. And so they were very upset at the results of this experiment. And the first one to try to give an answer to it was Hendrik Lorentz in 1892. And he said, well, the reason Michael saw that the Earth wasn't moving is because when the Earth moves, it affected his apparatus, his experimental apparatus, and it shrunk the apparatus, right? So this was just an ad hoc explanation. It had no scientific basis whatsoever. But they were stuck. They couldn't think of another answer for this experiment. And then Einstein came along, and he basically agreed with Lorentz, but he got rid of the ether that Lorentz had claimed was causing the contraction of Michelson's apparatus. Einstein said the contraction just happens by relative motion, you see. So what I'm saying basically is that the reason special relativity was created, was invented, was to answer this experiment to show the Earth wasn't moving around the sun. It was standing still in space, you see. And most people don't know that. They think special relativity is just some highfalutin theory that answers all our questions. But no, it's just the opposite, you see. And then it's funny because 10 years later, Einstein had to invent the general relativity theory because he didn't put gravity into the first theory, the special theory, in 1905. And when he did add gravity to the theory and made it the general theory, he agreed that the Earth could be in the center of the universe and not moving. Because everything is relative, you see. There's no difference between an Earth that's fixed and the universe going around it, as opposed to the universe being fixed and the Earth rotating inside of it. They are basically the same picture, you see, and that's relativity. So you might say that Einstein was hoisted by his own petard, because the first theory tried to get away from the non-moving Earth. The second theory came along 10 years later and admitted, yeah, that is a possibility, you see.
Yeah, this is something that, although I'm not a physicist, I studied engineering, a little bit struck me. I didn't know, and it was quite a surprise for me, to reduce all the importance of the Einstein relativity to the fact that it was done, and now I'm playing the devil's advocate part. You say that the main reason, or the only reason, for the special relativity was in order to explain Michelson-Morley experiment, because the other way of explaining that experiment was to have the Earth, let me say, standing still at the center and not moving in the ether. Is it really like that? There is no other reason that a scientist could take to the table in order to justify the importance of this theory?
There is one more, and that's if the ether is moving with the Earth. But that theory was discredited in 1925 by Michelson's second experiment. So basically we only had two solutions left, either relativity or the Earth wasn't moving in space.
Yes, it's very interesting.
Those have been the only solutions that we've ever had.
Yes, it's very interesting because in the documentary and the conferences that I've seen, you explain it very well. Many times scientists provide some ad hoc solution, which means a solution to justify something that is like a prejudice in my mind. I have to justify this because everybody knows, for example, that the Earth is moving. So in order to justify that, I provide some ad hoc solution. And that carries along, if it's false, a lot of consequences. Like, for example, you mentioned the dark matter or the dark energy, which nobody has ever been able to find. And not only that, but in the case of relativity, all the famous paradoxes of the consequences of the special Einstein special theory of relativity, like the twin paradox or other things like that, time shrinking, nobody understands what time shrinking means, or other things like that. How can the scientist continue believing in something that is creating so many problems, like the existence of dark energy, the existence of dark matter, which they have never found, and those paradoxes, etc.?
Well, it just shows that scientists are also philosophers and theologians. If you start with a basic foundational idea, a presupposition, a metaphysical presupposition that the Earth is moving around the sun, that means that every experiment you do is going to be interpreted based upon that foundation. And so you will find some way, if the experiment shows you that the Earth is not moving, you will find some way to make that Earth move. Believe me. These scientists are not just scientists in white lab coats who look at everything objectively. They have understandings of how they believe the universe should be, or how they've been taught it since childhood, and they can't get these ideas out of their mind. And that's what happened with Einstein and Lorentz. Their foundation was that the Earth was moving. So even if Michelson showed that it wasn't moving, we have to find some way to keep it moving, because we know that it's moving, you see.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the famous Airy experiment was named Airy's failure, because it was not possible that it show something different from what was the common idea, so it was a failure. I'm not able to accept something different from what is based in my mind. I had another question, which now I'm losing it. Yes, there is another English scientist, I think, Malcolm Bowden, I don't know if you've heard of him, who has published a video, and it's called Science Mafia. He says, we believe that the mechanism and of the peer review articles is something that grants that only articles that are peer reviewed by peers, etc., go to manage to access the famous reviews, etc., the famous magazine, etc. But instead, it's a way of keeping outside of the official standpoint of science what is out of the standard protocol. And it called it science mafia.
Even today at the Pontifical Academy of Science at the Vatican, it has 100 members, and not one of those members is allowed to be a creationist or a geocentrist.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
I had a very bad experience. I mean, let me steal you 1 minute of this. I've been during this spring, or was it April? I don't remember. Here in Padua, we have a great. How do you call those places where they project the stars, etc., the field, all the sky, etc.? Planetarium, sorry. A planetarium, and there was this event promoted by the local church. We had also the Bishop of Padua, where I live, present, attending, and we were there. And after the first 10 or 15 minutes showing some stars, they started showing an animation, a cartoon about evolutionism, like the first drop that it comes unicellular, and then it becomes a snake, and then the ape, and then the man. And I was saying, are we crazy? I am here to listen about the spaces, the stars, the supernova, etc., and they're talking to me about evolutionism. And it is the church that is promoting this. I was really, I had yet to jump out of there, but I could not. So at the end there was a kind of debate. I told them, how can you still prove these things which are completely unscientific? And I said, no, why? And there was a priest and say, why? What do you believe? Have you ever heard about God? Oh yes, but that's a different talk. No, it's not different. Okay, but I confirm what you say. It's absolutely. I don't know if you are just brainwashed or there is worse. I don't know. Okay, thank you very much.
Let me mention something about Isaac Newton that I think plays a very large part in why they think the way they do. The church had condemned Galileo for saying that the earth moved around the sun. And people were still up in the air about that. They didn't really come down one side or the other. The church was using the Tychonic model to defend any criticism that they had used the Ptolemaic model. And the Tychonic model worked very well. Then Isaac Newton came along, and he worked out his famous equations of gravity and force, F equals ma, and then the gravitational equation, okay? And that's where the other shoe dropped. That's when people said, oh, well, it's obvious now that the heliocentric...
You said that's where the other shoe dropped. This is something that I don't understand. Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Oh, that's an American expression where now we have the final say. Here is the real truth coming out, okay?
Okay.
And so everybody believed, because of Isaac Newton's equations, that the Earth had to go around the sun because the sun was bigger than the Earth. And that made a lot of sense. Even Galileo had seen that when he looked at Jupiter. Yeah. He saw the little moons going around Jupiter. So you would intuit that, well, if the Earth is smaller than the sun, it would have to go around the sun. And that was basically the last thing that had to be said. And ever since then, and then the Enlightenment came, and the High Renaissance came, and so they were basically basing all of their intellectual thought on what Newton said. And I discovered, and you don't have the book yet, but I'm going to send it to you. It's Geocentrism 101, and it's also when Galileo was wrong, where we found a statement from Isaac Newton who said, he admitted that the Earth could be at rest in the center of the universe if we had the proper forces outside the solar system, you see. And nobody realized before, when Isaac Newton was giving all his equations, that he was just limiting it to the solar system. And if you limit it to the solar system, well, of course the Earth will have to go around the sun. But there's a whole big universe out there, you see. And Isaac admitted if you add in those forces from the universe, then the Earth can be in the center and can be motionless.
I think you have published that page from Newton in the conference you made in Dallas, perhaps.
Yes, I did.
Okay,
yes.
Okay, I've heard of that. One final question, maybe too far. I've kind of been interested in the last times about the idea of a flat Earth. I'm not a flat earther, as they say. I believe that there are some good points in favor of a flat Earth. There are some other good points in favor of around a circular Earth. But to be honest, there are still some good points about the flat Earth. What is your opinion about that?
The only thing flat is the arguments for a flat Earth.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, I will admit this. There are some arguments that look like they might have some credibility, and there are others that are totally false. Yeah. But every person who believes in the flat Earth, I pose with this question. If the flat Earth is true, why can't people below the equator see the North Star, see Polaris at night? Okay? Because if you're living on a flat pancake, anybody on that little pancake should be able to see the North Star. But we don't. The people below the equator in the southern hemisphere see a whole different set of stars than we do in the northern hemisphere. Okay? And no one has been able to explain that to me. So if the flat Earth is true, I'm waiting for an explanation.
I don't want to deep dive into this, but the one possible answer is, who has ever told that the stars are so far as we assume that they are? There could be a dome, and you just see the ones that are near the position where you are. But I don't want to deep dive into this because I understand that it's too far from where we started. Robert, I thank you very much. Because of your time, because of your work. I didn't mention that you've published some 10, 15 books. I don't know how many. And how many are they? How many books have you published? 41. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm humbled by that, sorry. Thank you for giving the privilege to talk to you and to show you to my few viewers of my blog. Who deals about deception, by the way, I just wanted to know. I, like St. Paul, had my awakening. St. Paul's had his awakening in his way to Tarso. I don't know how it's said in English. I had my awakening after 9/11 when I discovered that we've been lied to and lied a lot. And at that point I said, then if they've been lying to us in such a big argument, in such a big thing, maybe they have lied in other things. And I have become completely free to look and accept everything. And of course, by reasoning, evaluating, confronting, etc. But that's been a kind of awakening and cutting of all the chains of knowledge that I had before. So my blog is about all of the deception, starting from fake terrorism to fake moon landing to drugs and medicinals, vaccines, etc., and geocentrism as well. Thanks to people like you. I'm a kind of man-in-the-middle translator from those who make the big investigations and the public, those who have not so much time to investigate. So I kind of make an abstract. And thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope to have you again and to hear something about you from you in the short future.
Are you related to the Medicis that go back to the time of Galileo?
For sure. My family comes from Florence, and some 500-600 years ago, but I think so. I don't know.
Is it the correct way to say it is Medici or Medici?
Medici. In Italian, you put the accents not on the last, but on the before last, Medici. Every Englishman would say Medici. Every Englishman would say Medici, but in Italian say Medici. And you're coming from...
Used to be,
yeah.
My name used to be Sungenisi.
Sungenisi.
Yes. My ancestors are from the Adriatic side. I'm trying to think of the city.
Yeah, in the middle of Italy. In the middle of Italy, I think.
No, it's on the East Coast. On the East Coast, La Marche.
Le Marche. Marche. Yes, yeah. It's midway from north to south.
Yes.
Okay.
That's where we're from.
If you ever happen to come to Italy, I live near Venice, so I'll be glad to have you as my guest.
Okay.
You and your family.
Alberto.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Let me see. No.